Hi folks, welcome to Edge Parts and Performance Methanol Madness, and just a few images and memories of the big weekend that we had at the Racecourse Hotel and Motor Lodge Ruapuna Speedway, and what a magnificent weekend it was if you attended, and if you didn't, we'll give you a bit of a review tonight. Joining us in the show is the voice of Ruapuna Speedway, AJ Batt. What a magnificent weekend that was.
Yeah, what a weekend, what an atmosphere, and what a show. It was just outstanding. We had high expectations, it exceeded them.
And Louise Smith, our regular contributor. Louise, you were in a position to take in some of that atmosphere. What were your thoughts?
Oh, it was pretty crazy, to be fair, to see the stadium packed like that, the pits, the racing. It was all just kind of spectacular, just as we expected it to be. It was a really cool event to be a part of.
Yeah, fantastic crowd at Ruapuna Speedway, the biggest crowd I've seen for many, many years, and it was certainly wonderful to be part of it. To get the show started, let's get straight into Crash of the Week. And on the Saturday night, the sprinters were racing, of course. And AJ, what did you make of this moment?
Well, Michael Pickens would have thought this campaign had come to an end, but it had actually started about 100 yards before there when Stephen Taylor and Pickens had got together, and you can just see there Pickens goes around and here comes Gene Spooner. The sunstrike got him. He couldn't see until the very last minute, and look, Gene felt pretty bad about it, but Pickens understood the situation, and Pickens had gone into it, you know, as an absolute favourite. And he probably thought the campaign was done there and then.
Yeah, we just see Gene going one way, all of a sudden sees the car and boomfa, and certainly some serious damage to both of those cars. And it was a miracle that Michael Pickens got himself up and running again. His crew did a pretty good job, and he qualified fairly well up the table, actually. So a good effort by the CRC team. Well, look, we had a second crash of the week. Of course, it was on the Sunday, and this didn't come from the sprint cars. It was a spectacular moment from Andrew Gregg in the V6 wingless sprints. And if we have a look at this, AJ, we see the Sockburn Mowers orange car out the back there, and then all of a sudden...
Yeah, there's a big fight for real estate, really. You could see Shooter Hawkins just came off the corner slightly wide. He's in the green and black car there, so he goes down and he's hugging the pole line, but then he just drifts off slightly. And there's a great big old meat sandwich, and you know there's only so many cars you can fit into 10 metres of racetrack.
Well, these crashes are always spectacular, and the crowds really enjoy watching them. Not so good for the drivers, but the whole weekend there was a sprinkling of very big crashes, which the crowd really got excited for. And unfortunately for Andrew Gregg, this was the biggest crash he's been involved in his whole career. I did have a chat with him yesterday, and he said that he's walking pretty slowly around work, but we can see him just gingerly getting out of the car there, and a big rebuild job for the Andrew Gregg racing team. So spectacular moments happening at the track on Saturday and Sunday. We'll talk about the sprint car racing a little later with the review, but certainly with the crowd in, the atmosphere was very high, AJ, and the sprinkling of crashes just seemed to make the whole evening.
Well, it became a little bit of a feeding frenzy, didn't it? You know, the crowd were hungry for action, and they were getting it by the bucket load. And so instead of them pulling up a couple of snapper, they were getting sharks fed to them in front of them. And you know, it just actually probably fed the atmosphere that little bit more. You know, they were seeing the hard and the fast, but you got to see the fast, the furious, and the crashes. They're part of the gig.
Absolutely. Well, look, folks, time to move on to the Pro Ben review of the night. We'll start with Saturday, and the first class we'll look at will be the quarter midgets. Louise, you're in charge of the quarters. What were the results, and who were some of the standouts for you?
We had a smaller field of quarter midgets, which was a nice change of pace from the usual fields that we used to of upwards of 15, which sometimes gets a little bit hectic. But the feature winner was, of course, Jack Brownlees, who was really stoked to bring that one home in front of a massive crowd. He had plenty of sponsors there. Everyone was there to support him. But I think that the most impressive drive of the night probably came from Isabel Clark. She got a second in her first heat race, and then she started off the front row of the feature, also coming home second in that one, which was a fantastic drive from her. Really good results for that team.
Well, the next class we'll look at is the TQs. Louise, again, this is a class that you cover. What were the results there?
So for the feature results on Saturday night, we saw Jeremy Webb taking out the win. Second went to Tyler Warner, which was a result he should be really pleased with after so much bad luck this season. It's nice to see some consistent podiums. And then third, of course, went to Ben Morgan.
Yeah, Ben Morgan doing double duty over the weekend. We'll talk about his Sunday efforts a little later on. So the next class we move on to is the modified sprints, and it was the Clay Cup for the modified sprints. They were supporting the Sprintcar title, but there was a very competitive group of drivers coming down for the Clay Cup, and an absolute boil over. Liam Astle took out the Clay Cup, and it's his rookie year. So some very pleased family members of Liam Astle's celebrating his win in the Clay Cup. Cameron McKenzie second and Jaden Fraser for third. Craig Cox, by the way, was competing very well. It was him and Liam Astle that were going pretty hard, but a mistake by Coxie, and Liam Astle didn't look back and took out the feature win, and that's a big moment for the young rookie's career. So of course on Saturday night it was qualification for the New Zealand Sprint Car title, and we got to see 9 heats of the Sprint Cars. AJ, the racing was unbelievably strong. What were some of the standouts for you?
Well, I think, the scene was set very early in the show when Pickens was dominant in that first heat over Matthew Levisage. But one of the highlights for me was Gene Spooner finishing third in that first heat. And what it did, it showed that any one of the 40-odd drivers, of 41, 42 that were there, were very capable of putting in a strong showing in the heat races if they had a good starting position. And I think that's the first time Gene's actually had a placing. It was like winning the Nationals for him. What a confidence booster you had. And when you go through the results of that first round, McDonald won the next one from Allard with Stephen Taylor. Probably no real surprise there. And then the third one was Connor Rangi, getting a notch in the belt for the mainland. And, that was a good start to his campaign as well. And I think they would be very happy in the main about how it went.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the theme for the night on qualification night was there was quite a bit of adversity for some of the favourite drivers. And Jamie Duff had a fuel pump issue in his very first heat. He was leading the race and looking really racy, and he did particularly well eventually to qualify quite high up for the final the next day. But in the Duff family, it was Steve Duff Jr. took out a heat race. What a big moment that was.
Yeah, the gas man, he really did nail it, didn't he? And you talk about the adversity, and I think when you look at Pickens having his issue, it actually it helped Pickens's cause that so many of the favourites had problems in heat races.
Yep.
Rather than just Michael Pickens being the only one, a whole bunch of them dropped vital points, and so that it kind of smoothed out the ledger for a lot of the drivers.
Yeah, you're exactly right, AJ. There was some pretty interesting results on that first day, but of course they still had 2 more races the very next day before final qualification would be decided. But certainly some good standouts by the local drivers.
Triple X chassis are now in stock at Edge Parts and Performance. These outstanding sprint car chassis are winners with the World of Outlaws, proven in Pennsylvania, and raced on the bull rings of New Zealand. Edge Parts and Performance, proud stockists of racer-inspired, race-proven Triple X chassis and race components. The team at Edge Parts and Performance have got safety covered. They're proud stockists of Simpson safety products, helmets, head and neck restraints, harnesses, racing suits, gloves, shoes and more. Simpson safety products provide an unparalleled level of comfort, performance and protection. Come and check out their new range of Simpson suits, lightweight 2-layer SFI approved suits that offers flexibility and functionality all in one. They've also got the Red Devil carbon fibre lightweight racing helmet in stock.
So we move on to night 2, and of course this is the big night for the sprint cars, and we'll talk about those in a few moments, but we'll get the support classes out of the way. The first class we looked at was the TQs. Louise, tell us about night 2 at the championship.
Yeah, so the heat races went much like the feature results that we mentioned earlier. So Jeremy Webb took out heat race number 1, followed by Ben Morgan and Jamie Booth, which is a fantastic result for Boothie Jr. going on in that first heat race. And then heat 2 was Tyler Warnock, Jeremy Webb and Ben Morgan, which was just the feature results just slightly switched up. So it was really great racing for all of them, but they'd be pretty gutted they didn't get their feature in on night 1.
Yeah, exactly. The sprint car is taking priority, of course. We move on to the wingless sprints, and this was a pretty interesting result. Jake Shearing, who I believe was involved with that big crash that we looked at before with Andrew Gregg, he took out the feature race, and it was his brother, Luke Shearing, taking out second, and our very best V6 wingless sprint man from Canterbury, Andrew Marker, taking out the third position. Some good racing there in the V6 wingless sprints, AJ?
Yeah, it's very competitive, isn't it? And it just gets that little bit of an edge when the drivers from down south make their way up, and the Shearing boys were impressive.
Yeah, well, they've got their rumble coming up a little further in the calendar, so certainly all the good guys are coming to the top. It'd be great to see the Shearing boys in the rumble. I hope they come back and show us how good they are. Of course, we've got 4 drivers booked in from Auckland coming down, and Andrew Gregg telling me 28 drivers in the rumble, so that'll be a good event for them.
Yeah, really awesome for the wingless. It's a class that just thrives on numbers.
Okay, the next class we'll look at is the midgets, another support class, and it was Ben Morgan doing double duty, and Ben Morgan, he took out the feature race. A good result by him, followed by Tom Lumsden and Liam McCoubry. AJ, it's not often we don't get too excited about midgets when they're going around the track, but the sprint cars were really just so compelling to watch.
Yeah, they were, and I think the midgets, they may have just struggled slightly with the slickening track. They were maybe looking just for a little bit more dirt, and so the big classic slides and so on with Glenjury roaring around the top, it was just kind of missing, but it was still a pretty good performance by, a smallish sort of field.
Exactly, and so of course we come to our feature event, which was the Accessman New Zealand Sprint Car title, and what a fantastic night of racing it was, highlighted by this amazing presentation at the track. There were fireworks going off, 20 cars competing in a 30-lap feature, and my God, did it have some drama. We had all the favourites starting from the front, and plenty of the heavyweights sort of sprinkled through the pack, and it initially started off pretty well. AJ, it looked like Jonathan Allard was just going to streak them for a while, but he ran into problems.
Yeah, on lap 10, Allard, he had, over the length of the straight advantage over Daniel Thomas, and there'd been a couple little telltale signs early in the show where the engine was spewing out a little bit of smoke and so on, but she ventilated probably in one of the bigger ways that's possible. Heartbreaking for Jonathan Allard. It really was. This is a couple of times now when he's been in a commanding position in the Nationals and had an engine issue. So, I really felt for the guy. But man, Daniel Thomas, he'd sort of just gone about things quietly and very methodically through the heat races. But he was always pretty much a favourite as well. He just doesn't do anything silly out there on the racetrack. He's fast and he's so smooth.
Yeah, well, so that was the first drama that played out on the field. So we seen Jonathan Allard on the infield after about 6 or 7 laps, and he was wringing the teeth out of that sprint car. But I think he deep down knew that it could go pop at any stage, so he certainly helped it go pop. He, for 6 or 7 laps, sat outside Thomas to try and wrestle the lead off him, and with a bit of perseverance, he actually managed to do that. The next thing that was that happens, we had a couple of minor incidents, some restarts and so forth, and it was Joel Myers Jr. who had his part to play on the big stage. And for those that were watching, Joel Myers Jr. was the only sprint car driver capable of carving his own way around the very outside of the track. And there were times where he was banging the wall, he was within millimetres of tipping the car up, and he got a little bit of drive, AJ, but he just couldn't find that drive that he needed to with the inside groove still holding enough grip for these drivers.
Yeah, I think that the sort of top side of the racetrack was probably about 1.5 metres too narrow because of the conditions and that. Before that feature race started, if there had been a little bit more meat in the sandwich up there, I'm pretty sure Joel Myers would have made a real impression on the race. Would he have won it? I don't know, but he was really hooked up to that high groove, and what a whale of a show. Probably the guy I was most chuffed for about 18 laps was our old mate Matt Honeywell. Here's Matt, been racing sprint cars for a long time and farming commitments. He's a very busy guy, but he ran in 3rd spot, and I think if things had have actually played out, he was capable of a real upset.
I think you're right, and for those again that were there on the track, we all know what happened. Joel Myers Jr. took an inside run at Matt Honeywell, and both of them were side by side going into turn one, and difficult to know who actually was at fault here. I know that the crowd thought Joel Myers Jr. knocked Matt Honeywell out, and he slid around, did a pirouette and ended up on the fence. A fairly gentle roll in the end, but man, was he PO'd at that. And he had the crowd on his side, didn't he?
Oh, he did, absolutely. That's part of the theatre of Speedway. There's heroes, there's villains, there's favourites, there's the not so favourite, and so on. And it probably would have been a bit of a tough call because the local crowd have really taken to Joel Myers Jr.
Yep.
But I think there was that real sentimental favourite thing
Yep.
with Matt Honeywell, and how good was it to see him having a real crack at these guys?
Absolutely, and spoke to Matt after the incident back in the pits. He was rightly annoyed and frustrated, but he reckoned he had something to offer, and he seriously thought he could either get to second or first. The way that car was hooked up and going, and he really was in a strong position to make a big statement. So the race restarted again, of course, and it was Daniel Thomas leading out with Michael Pickens, and that slick track on the inside was not really offering any passing, and Michael had a little lurch from time to time, but it was Daniel Thomas that sustained the pressure, AJ, and went on to win the New Zealand Sprint Car title.
Yeah, there was plenty of pressure. Thomas, he's a really smooth operator. He is as cool as, and you just sensed that Michael Pickens was waiting for the opportunity. If there was going to be even a quarter of a sniff, Pickens would have gone for it, but it didn't happen because we all know how composed that Daniel Thomas is, and he just held on, and it was great to see. But also Matthew Levisage, he just, again, he was another one of these guys that he played the game out the whole weekend long. He did the smart stuff. A couple of times he got very close to other people's messes, but we've known for a long time that Levisage, he's got some real talent, and it came through a podium in a New Zealand Sprint Car Championship for Matthew Levisage. Just so deserved in my book.
Absolutely, and for everyone watching the competition at the front, it was enthralling to watch Thomas, Pickens, and some of those earlier moments we talked about. But there was so much racing for 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and we're talking to the likes of Stephen Taylor, Connor Rangi, Joel Myers, Jamie McDonald, and Matthew Levisage. And at different times through the race, they all poked their nose up. They got a couple of placings, then they lost a couple of placings. It was enthralling to watch. It was one of the best New Zealand Sprint Car titles I've ever seen. It really had lots of drama playing out, and as we've already indicated, it was Matthew Levisage that took out third. It was a great result for the locals here at Ruapuna, and he celebrated in style, and we caught up with him after the race.
In third place, the Christchurch boy Matthew Levisage. How good was that?
Yeah, that was expletive awesome. That was unreal. Obviously a lot of pressure from really hard, but we lost a few spots, and the guys said stay patient, it'll come to you, and the car was really good. I just started running a bit slower just to make sure I didn't make a mistake, but that's awesome, to get third at Ruapuna, my home track. I grew up there in the stands dreaming of getting a podium in this championship, so it is awesome.
Matthew Levisage very pleased with his 3NZ title. He's really been knocking on the door for some time, and it's good to see him realise that potential. The next person we spoke to at the podium was Michael Pickens.
Michael Pickens, he threw everything at this, including the kitchen sink. Michael, a tough weekend in many respects, but boy, you gave it everything. There's no crumbs on the plate.
No, we didn't win, but man, I was super proud of my team. They rallied pretty hard last night to get our car back together. It's a credit to them that we're standing in this position right now.
At any point, did you think you had one sniff of getting Daniel Thomas, or was it just waiting for him, waiting for the race to come to you?
Yeah, we had a really good car. I thought we were slightly better, and maybe he was conservative, but there's only so many opportunities you get when a track lays rubber like that, and you're just got to sit and wait. Really, had a one shot on that restart when he went to the top and nearly cleared him on the bottom. But man, if anyone else is going to win it, I'm pretty glad it's him. He's a hell of a driver, and the team deserves it.
Great stuff, folks. Number 2 NZ, Michael Pickens.
So Michael, pretty gracious about losing his one NZ title, and very pleased for Daniel Thomas. Well, joining us in the studio is Daniel Thomas, our new New Zealand Sprintcar champion. Good to see you, Daniel, and it must have been a hell of a week for you, mate.
Yeah. No, good to see you guys. What a weekend. That was a big one.
So take me through it, mate. You had a pretty intense qualification. You kept your nose fairly clean. You didn't seem to get into too many dramas. How did the first day go for you, if you could just remind our audience?
Yeah, it went really well. We had to get used to the track, and Connor Ingy actually really showed us up in the first one, passing us, and we realised we had some work to do to try and keep up, because we haven't raced there before, and we once that happened, and we started getting through all the other heats, we started finding our groove, and like you say, we kept our noses very clean. I don't think we touched the car pretty much all weekend, so it went about as well as it could.
Well, it must have felt pretty good, because I know you really like that Harper Leonard car that you've been given this year, and it's certainly got a lot of horsepower in it, and it looks super smooth on the track. The attitude of the car just looks so well set up. What do you put that down to?
Most definitely Jason McIndoe. He's just right on with setup with this thing. Me and him just work together so well, and that's just been key, absolute key this year, and the years before too. But we're just getting better and better as we go. And also Kevin at Flying W Race Suspension, the FK shock development that we've been doing with this car and with Kevin is just another thing that's just really got us going. And yeah, we can't thank these guys enough. And obviously, Jeff Harper and his team, all their knowledge, Ryan O'Connor, getting his knowledge. It's basically getting two cars out there of knowledge on the track, and it's just absolutely, critical to getting us to where we are at the moment.
Well, after qualification, you did qualify second top, I think it was. I think Jonathan Allard was first qualifier. And you found yourself in an epic battle with Jonathan Allard for what seemed like about 8 or 10 laps. Can you tell us how that played out for you? What were your nerves like? What were you thinking when it was going on?
Yeah, well, the first start was a bit messy, and credit to the officials at Ruapuna. They pulled it up and made sure that everyone got a fair chance. They did it all weekend, actually, so congratulations to them. That was, put on a spectacular display for the whole weekend with all calls. But to run side by side with Jonathan Allard for 4 or 5 laps, or however many it was just, he's just such a masterclass, and wasn't worried running next to him the whole time. I had a feeling that he'd probably edge ahead, because he's I couldn't get rid of him, but he definitely had some pace, and just unlucky for him. You could see how bad his motor was smoking. It was kind of a matter of time, I guess. But
yeah, we should give him his dues, because he did engage in that epic 5, 6, maybe even 8 lap duel with you, and it's not easy to hold the pace when you're right on the outside and having to go the furthest distance away. But you did see that car finally expire, and how did it feel at that stage? Was it relieving, or where did your thoughts turn to after that?
I wouldn't say relieving, because never want to see someone come out of the championship like that, but I kind of expected it after how bad it was smoking, so I just knew, all right, I'm gonna just keep my marks, and I knew I wasn't driving as fast as I probably could have, but just being conservative and make sure the car doesn't break, I won't push it too hard or anything, and I wasn't getting challenged too badly from what I could see or hear, and we just kept at it, and their white flag was.
So you were putting in some very consistent laps. It didn't look like you were going to be passed, but of course you don't know that being a sprint car driver. You just hear motor noises right behind you. Was there a moment where you felt the confidence that this could be yours?
Yeah. As soon as I saw that white flag, I just knew, one more lap. I think we got this. And I think it was a lap before that Michael. I slipped off line a little bit. He come up underneath. But I just kept it tight on the pole line, so there wasn't much opportunity for him to actually get by me. And just like I say, just kept it clean. Made sure I come out of that corner, fast and straight, and kept the wheels under it. And I couldn't believe seeing the checkered flag, and I was just over the moon.
You're a quiet sort of a guy and you don't have a big flamboyant style, but man, you've been driving that car so well over the last few years that the crowd really was on your side, and there was a massive roar when you went past the finish line. I don't know if you heard that, and certainly people really enjoyed the performance that you put on. What did it feel like? You get past the finish line, checkered flag's there, you're pulling off donuts, you pull straight into victory lane, you've got the fireworks going. I mean, tell us that whole experience.
As soon as I passed the checkered flag, I was just screaming. I'm surprised the crowd couldn't hear me because I was just absolutely couldn't believe it. I was just screaming and punching the chassis of the car. I was just so happy. So, that's just an absolute dream. That kind of my life achievement is to win the New Zealand's and to finally do it. I don't know if I ever thought it would ever happen, and yeah, sure enough. So absolutely awesome.
Well, it's a big congratulations from us, and I'll come back to you in a second, Daniel. AJ, it was a great performance, wasn't it? And we knew he was one of the hot shots there, and he had a really good car, but a pretty professional drive all through those heats, got himself into a strong position for the final, and I think he really dominated after that initial excursion with Jonathan Allard.
Yeah, he really did dominate, and Daniel, with all due respect, you're not really a name that was to the fore down here to a lot of people, but when you came down and took out that South Island Championship driving for Kevin Freeman a few years ago, you basically saw the car on the trailer, you got in and you won the South Island Championship. But was there a sort of time in that race when Jonathan got a little bit of a break on you? Was there a little bit of a plan that you might try and make some inroads once you got into the lap traffic? Because even though the lap traffic was going fast, there were a few little gaps in there that you could have capitalised on.
Yeah, I obviously he started gapping me quite fast, and I had to try and settle down and try and hit my marks, because I was starting to just probably lose my marks a little bit for a moment there, and once I got settled down and then obviously it was about that same time he pulled off, I thought, okay, we'll just keep at it. If I do see or hear anything come around the outside of me, I'm just gonna go full tit into the corner and slide back in front of them and just run the high line, or whatever I needed to do. So I watched the last time the New Zealand champs were there when Jamie Larson won it. So I figured it was a very similar track. It could have very well gone that way towards the end of the race. So I was prepared in my mind and ready for it, but I never saw anything, and I figured just keep at it, and yeah.
Yeah, and then in the later stages of the race, you knew that Michael Pickens was there, but does a driver sort of go on the defence, or do you have to continue attacking?
I was on the defence big time. I definitely think I had more, but I don't know if I did start pushing more, if I would make more mistakes, and that's what I was very cautious about. And same with starting to push the brakes more on the car, and if they would fail towards the end if I used them too much, because I was seeing sparks coming out of the left front quite a bit, just as the way I was using them as it was. So I just slowed down and just tried to keep it as tight as I could, and that was basically, just keep the car going.
Yeah, okay. And your first time at Ruapuna in a sprint car, impressions? We're going to see you soon again, I hope.
Oh yeah, definitely. What a cool place. Probably I got a few highlights of the weekend, and to beat Jamie Duff. I know he was trying to fly around the outside of me, and that probably really made my night, especially for the final night, to run the bottom, knowing he was up there and just keep it tidy. And I learnt the track quite well in that race. So and also the last heat that I had with Campbell McManaway when he was leading. That was probably the coolest race I've had in many years, if not ever. That was so much fun, running up the top and sliding Taylor, and then the last couple of laps with full attack from Joel Myers on me, and just running, just having fun. That was just fun. So yeah, it was a cool place.
Well, I tell you what, Daniel, Campbell McManaway will be very pleased to hear those words from you. He's just a rookie this year, and he certainly outdrove his skill level all weekend, and it was a wonderful race to watch you guys passing each other. So look, we'll probably leave it at that, Daniel. Thank you very much for joining us. Well, actually, just last question. What's it been like? Has your phone blown up? Have you got plenty of people wanting to find out how it went for you?
Oh yeah, hundreds of messages and phone calls and just people everywhere. It's been amazing. It's very overwhelming. So basically, when I got home, my wife told me to mow the lawn, so it was quite good to just try and settle down from all the hype and everything. But yeah, what a weekend Ruapuna put on, and the fans down there are just awesome. All the people down there, Kane, Chris, Charlene, Gemma, they put us up in their house, and we stayed there for the weekend. So that was just awesome for them, and then even one of their neighbours, I slept at their house, Chip. Just absolute legends of people, and it was such a cool weekend and great fun. So thank you.
Look, we're very pleased that you enjoyed it, and even just that little story of people helping out, it's typical of all Speedway across the country, and it's something that a lot of people don't appreciate. Look, Daniel, thanks again for catching up with us. I just want to tell you one wee story here. We had Roger Gleeson win the title in 1984, and it was a very similar crowd at the track, and it was reminiscent of what was happening in 84. You may well go down as one of the better sprint car title winners at Ruapuna. Certainly the crowd played its part. It was absolutely enormous. Even though we had some challenges with the weather, the racing was fantastic, and the crowd appreciated every lap that you put in. So thanks again, mate, for joining the show, and we'll catch up with you with a bit of luck when you come down to perhaps the War of the Wings, or maybe in the Salute to Goody.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Good stuff. Daniel Thomas joining the show, and he's certainly going to be in hot demand around all the tracks as far as sprint car racing goes. Pretty humble sort of a guy, AJ, but really knows his craft.
Yeah, very humble. What a wheelman. He's just such a great racer. And one guy said to me, in his words, this is the people's champion. And I absolutely agree with that sentiment.
One thing on champions, you often see NZ1 title holders, and sometimes you see them race the next year and they don't defend that title very well at all. I got a feeling Daniel Thomas is going to be poking his nose up at all those feature races, the Bay Parks, the Western Springs, the Keys, and a few other tracks, and he's certainly of that quality. So we hope that he can defend the New Zealand Championship next year. But it's a great ride for him for the next 12 months. He gets to carry one NZ on the back of his tail tank, and he should be very proud of that. Well, look, folks, time to move on to final thoughts. And AJ, you get the first final thought. I know you're very impressed with a few drivers at the track over the 2 days. What are your final thoughts?
Look, I think for me, what it underlined is the raw talent that is coming right through the sprint car ranks. This is not Dad's army out there racing. And when you look at the guys, Jamie Duff's only like 32 years of age. He's been racing sprint cars for probably 16, 17 years. But he's got age on his side still. Max Guilford, Campbell McManaway, that was just such a great run by a rookie. They sort of just get out there and go and do the business. A lot of drivers, they had their moment in the sun. Even Alicia Hill, qualifying for the B main, she drove really smart. The young South Islanders, some of them I think were slightly overawed by the occasion. Like the War of the Wings can be torrid, but a sprint car nationals is like 2 steps up above that. And every one of them will have learned something, and so a big ups to any of the drivers that got out there and took it on. But I think sprint car racing in New Zealand is alive and well, sir.
Absolutely. And Louise, you were out and about. You managed to get around the track a couple of times. What were your experiences or final thoughts?
I agree with AJ totally about the talent that's coming through. I think that it says a lot about the calibre of sprint car drivers all across New Zealand right now that, none of my top 3 picks actually finished in the top 3 yet, or top 3 were so deserving of those podium finishes. I think that the field itself was just so large in talent and in everything that it had going for it. I think it was a really, really cool event, and one that will definitely go down in history.
Well, for me, folks, the reinvigoration of a stadium event at Ruapuna Speedway, coming right back to the 70s, 80s and 90s, where Speedway was king of the entertainment, and that's what I seen on the weekend. 4,000, maybe a few more spectators floating around the stadium, glued to their seats, falling in love with all these drivers that all had big reputations, titles to look after, and it was wonderful. The young kids were enjoying it. Not one person left the stadium until that 30-lap feature was over. The fireworks going off. It was a real spectacle there, and certainly there was a hum around the pits afterwards. There must have been 500, 600 people in the pits afterwards, and every sprint car driver was doing their part, signing autographs. Even the guys that had crashed out, even the guys that finished way down the track. The merchandise was going out. And I tell you what, AJ, I think we've reinvigorated Speedway out at Ruapuna, and what a wonderful result for our committee and for those people that attended.
Oh, exactly. There has been an absolute beeline on the entertainment factor. The number of people that want to go to Speedway is sort of like that big. The number of people that want a night out is what's the population? And they are going to Ruapuna, they're getting those little extras. We've got the clowns, we've got the fireworks, we've got the sound system, we've got your choice of music. And so, it is a night out, it's an occasion, and, people are getting on board.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, if you haven't been to Ruapuna, you're just seeing the show for the first time, we've still got several meetings this year that you can get down to and experience what it's like to get up close and personal to 900 horsepower sprint cars going around a 400 metre track. It's an unbelievable sensation of raw power, skill, thrills and spills at times, and it's just something you can't describe to people until you actually get to the track. Well, look, folks, it's been a good show. Good to have Daniel Thomas on the show tonight and get his thoughts a few days after actually winning the title. And until next time, keep your foot up it.